Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly O'Horo, and this is Adaptable Behavior Explained. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to Adaptable. I'm Kelly O'Horo, who is usually the host of the show, but today we're going to flip the script. And Julie Russomanno, friend and colleague of mine, asked if she could take the reins on today's episode because she's got some things she wanted to ask me. So, Julie, go ahead and take it from here.
Thanks, Kelly. So, what we're going to do today, like Kelly said, is we're going to flip the script and we're going to have a conversation and get some insights and inspiration and a few surprises as we get to know Kelly in a whole different way. So, are you ready to jump in?
Well, I'm here. We'll see.
All right. Well, I guess my first question is when you look back at your younger self, what parts of you have stayed the same and what parts of you have changed?
Well, I think that my personality has always been, pretty chipper and pretty outgoing and gregarious. And that's probably still the same. I think that I did more attention seeking behaviors to, I don't know, make sure people liked me when I was younger. And so that extroversion paired with that, and it worked and it was socially reinforcing. But I think now I'm still very extroverted, but I'm also fine not being the center of it all. And so I think that's something that's changed. But also, I mean, so much has changed, but that stands out to me as far as like a trait that I hold that isn't so, maybe it's not quite so noisy.
What has kind of come up as you've aged and mature and moved into so many different roles that is similar yet different from when you were a child?
Well, I've always had my hand in a lot of things, and I would get bored easily if I was not learning something new
Mhm.
or involved in something new. And so I think that's the same, being able to be involved in, for like right now, teaching, being a therapist, running a practice, starting a software company. All of these things are keeping me very much on my toes. But I would say that I've always been interested in continuing to learn, continuing to grow, and exploring new things. So I would say those things are definitely similar, but they're showing up in maybe more complicated ways as I'm older.
Okay. So, Kelly, what personal experiences have kind of shaped you becoming a counselor and a communicator about counseling?
Boy, isolating any specific experience would be impossible because I think the culmination of our experiences really do set the stage for whatever our next journey is. I think that as a child, I was part of a YMCA RAG program, and one of those things was self improvement. And as a YMCA ragger, every year I would take a new challenge to grow, and we would talk to somebody. They called it getting counseled on that rag or that reminder for your self growth. And I
Okay.
think that was probably the first thing that lent itself towards growing is cool and having someone to support you in that growing is cool. So I
Mhm.
would say that would be first. But then I was an RA in college, and that kind of had a similar tone of,
Mhm.
being a mentor, being a supporter, and being there for people to talk to. And then I was a teacher. And as a teacher, children, if you're approachable, will then come talk to you about things that are important or hard for them. And so I think I naturally offered, wisdom, guidance, non-judgmental support as part of my personality. And I think those things are maybe hallmarks that set the stage for naturally being a therapist. And I'm an Enneagram too, so I'm a helper by nature, and I think that's part of it. But then I had a bunch of kids that needed a lot of help, and we had them in counseling, and I learned it's an important job, and I also learned I wanted to try to do it better than we had experienced. And so I would say those are all maybe culminating factors that brought me to where I'm at. And then bringing the teaching history together with being a counselor for almost 15 years now, I think it's just a natural transition to want to teach and educate through, this podcast and blogging and things like that. So I don't know. Those are probably the primary things.
Okay. So it sounds like throughout your life you've had periods where you have reinvented yourself, where you've changed careers,
Oh yeah.
where something has led you down a different path than maybe you planned on. So if you look back on your life, are there moments that you return to for strength and clarity throughout all of the different professions that you've done and all the different hats that you wear?
I'm pretty present, and I'm more future oriented, or maybe anxiety, like the worry about the future more than I am about perseverating over the past or things. I don't know that I return to things to necessarily ground myself. I do try to return to things that do ground me, like meditation, or slowing down and taking time to just take in nature and things like that when I'm feeling a little bit frazzled and I need
Mhm.
to ground myself. But I don't know if there's any specific historical moment that I fall back to ground myself that comes to mind.
Okay. All right. But things like slowing yourself down or being in nature have
Yeah.
always been something that is important to you?
I do think I've always been attracted to and resonated with being around water and being in nature. And I think that back to that summer camp experience, it was in the mountains and it was always clear and crisp and beautiful and sunny and smelled good like the pine trees. And so I think I had a grounding element of connection and belonging at summer camp. And so I have an affinity towards that. But now, knowing what I know about research, nature grounds all of us. I mean, it's how we're built. And so I know that I'm more calm and more present when I have opportunity to be, in those types of environments for sure.
Okay. So as we know, our early experiences are always kind of a part of who we become,
Yeah.
right? So can you speak a little bit about how maybe some of your early experiences growing up led you into eventually the counseling profession and to becoming a podcaster and a communicator?
Sure. I think that being a child of a family that was broken when I was 12, my parents divorced, and I ended up being ultra autonomous and ultra independent in the absence of my dad and really my mom as she dealt with the grief and loss of her marriage and relationship in our family as it once was. And I think that witnessing that definitely made me realize that I want to help people and also that I need to be strong. I need to be strong. I need to be independent. I don't want to be dependent on somebody for my survival. Those are all lessons that I think that some of my major childhood trauma taught me, and wanting to make sure that I set myself up in a way that I could be, independent and strong and able to be there for myself and others should they need it. So I would say that, my adaptation has been to be like, not lean on others because if they aren't there for you, then you're kind of screwed. And of course, now I know I need to. I can't do what I'm doing and whatnot. But it took. I mean, even my poor husband. It took me a long time before I'd even let him carry my darn suitcase because I was like, I got it.
Oh, what?
So and
Tell
and in our early years with you, I mean, I had a hard time asking for help and support because I believed that it meant I wasn't competent or I was needy or whatever else. But I think the deeper, most underlying aspect of not wanting to lean on people for help had more to do with what if they're not there for me eventually and then I'll be alone? Because that's kind of how I experienced, the time when my folks split.
Yeah.
And
So
I didn't want to do that to others.
it was a lonely time
Oh
and
yeah.
maybe fearful for you
Oh,
as
for
well?
sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I knew it at the time, but going through trauma therapy, I definitely reflected on lots of loneliness and lots of fear and anger and all the things and sadness, of course.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And part of your learning has been to let people help you.
Oh, 100%. And I mean,
Let
it's
people carry your
yeah, let
suitcase.
people
That's a
carry my
great
suitcase and
story.
help me and be there for me and now, my communication is so much different. I mean, we just, between the last episode and our we batch film and my lovely daughter-in-law and friend, she said, "What does help look like? What kind of support do you need? Because I'm going through a hard time with my mom right now." And just knowing that I can say, I need compassion, I need grace, and I need more hugs right now. Like I know that I
Mhm.
need those things, and the more I can get of those things right now is probably going to help me be in a better situation than I'm currently feeling with all that stuff going on. So,
Yeah, so just, sometimes just letting down all those things and being vulnerable.
and realizing that I don't have to be alone because now I can choose to have people around that can show up for me, and it's different.
Yeah.
As an adult, it's different. You can decide who's in your circle.
Okay.
That's lucky that we can
Yeah.
choose those things.
So when did you start learning through your education that you could choose that you could choose who to be in your circle? I know you've done a lot of studying with trauma-based stuff, with
Hmm.
Brene Brown stuff. How did you, and and my guess is that these shifts have happened since the time of the divorce as
Oh,
you've
yeah.
grown
I
and
mean, the
stuff, but
gradual evolution of all of us, I think, is paramount. I mean, none of us are just like, I'm this way today and tomorrow I'm this way. I mean, it's obviously
mhm.
a gradual evolution. And, I don't even really remember myself as someone who can't ask for help. I know that I was her forever, but I'm
Mhm.
not her now. I mean, I have no problem asking for help. And I'm not even resentful when people can't, that's really cool too, is to go, well, if I ask for help and then they won't help me or they can't help me, then I'm just going to be mad and disappointed. So I'm not going to ask. And now I'm like, I'll take a shot. Sometimes it'll be a yes, sometimes it'll be a no. And that's normal, so I think
Yeah.
that's a different place to be as well.
So being vulnerable is one thing that probably helps you kind of balance your emotional needs.
Oh, yeah.
What are some other ways that a counselor
Hmm.
balances their own emotional needs as well as, holding space for their clients? I think that's something a lot of counselors struggle with early on and probably all throughout their
Sure.
careers.
I mean, I can always tell when I'm out of balance, when I'm not working out as much, or I'm not meditating, or I'm not cold plunging. The things that I've developed over the last couple of years pretty consistently, they have allowed me to be pretty even and balanced and measured more than probably any other time in my life. I have such a consistent, self-care routine now. And then of course my own therapy, friends, family members that I'm close with, those are where I go for balance and support to make sure that I can stay in tune and in line for my clients when I'm working with them.
What inspired you to start this podcast?
A handful of things. I would say the first thing was we sometimes feel like broken records in our counseling office with some of the concepts and content that really everyone needed to learn. I always tell my clients the counseling office is the classroom for all the things emotional and coping skills and relational that we didn't learn growing up because our parents are our teachers of how to do these things, and oftentimes they really didn't know how to teach us the right way, and so we end up like with misinformation. And I thought, I teach these things in counseling to my patients all day every day, but what about those people that don't have the opportunity to see someone like me and they're just perusing the internet and they don't know how to discern quality information? And you've got people that are podcasting without educations, and we have people that are claiming expertise in certain areas where they don't really have necessarily the background to justify that. And so there's a lot of information that's not awesome on the internet. And I thought, I am someone who is a teacher. I am someone who does say these things all day long. And I do have a generous heart. I want to make sure that we're getting good information out there. And so, one of the motivators was, if I say this and we record it, then we can just like share it. And then I don't have to say it, 480 times. And if I have 3,000 views on an episode, I'm like, I didn't say it 3,000 times. I said it one time, but 3,000 people could hear it and learn that. And that feels really gratifying because I'm, able to spread good information that has research backing. And that way people can have access to information that they might not have otherwise had access to. And so that felt important to me as far as just like my opportunity to give back. And it also challenges the creative side of me that doesn't get necessarily opportunity to grow. And I'm so focused in a clinical setting. Yes, we have opportunities for creativity, but it's it's in the moment. It's not prior to as much. It's like it's a different part of my brain that I get to use. So I get to research and explore and ask our team, what topics do we need to get on an episode that you're running into that you would like a little bit more support with. So I don't know, I like the creative side of it. I mean, even you, when you came up to me and said, I want to interview you, you don't do this. And, you're always the one that interviews people and nobody asks about you. And I want to ask about you. And I thought, okay, we'll do that, And so it was an opportunity to be creative and do something different, which is fun. I mean, we need to exercise that play side of things in our creative side of our brain for sure.
So you wanted to be able to be a voice that's accessible to people that they
Right.
could trust
Yeah, and
with the
not
information.
not socioeconomically impaired. Like, if you don't have money, I mean, everybody has access to internet these days. It's like, most I shouldn't say everybody, but most people have access to internet, and even people who are in a lower socioeconomic status have access to YouTube and public Wi-Fi and things like that that, so much more easily attainable now.
Mhm.
And so that was another thing. I wanted to be able to get information out that's not barriered,
Okay.
by how much money you make.
Mm. What have you learned about podcasting, about getting your information out since your very first podcast?
Um, gosh, everything. I didn't know anything. Like, I didn't know anything about this. I would watch episodes of other people's, and stylistically how people would do their shows. And I have certain podcasts that I really love. I love Mel Robbins. I like Daniel Tosh. I like several different therapy specific podcasts, like Notice That. And I just listen to other people's, take on things, their stance on things, and try to interweave what I like and things that I might want to do to bring in. But mostly what I've learned is that I can do it, that I can speak publicly without being so nervous.
Mhm.
It's vulnerable. I mean, I make plenty of mistakes, and people can zero in and they can, be trolls and say, you said this wrong thing. But one of my favorite statements by Brene Brown is, if you're not also in the arena getting your ass kicked, I'm not interested in your opinion. And so I'm kind of like, you
Yeah.
can be a troll and say negative things, but you're not in the arena doing this also. Or maybe you are, and you're just, got things that you don't like, or you have input. And I'm a firm believer in take what you like and leave the rest. And so, that said, I mean, I've become better at public speaking for sure, and more comfortable teaching. I know that I'm much better on my feet now when I teach courses, and I like that side of things. So, I mean, I've learned so much. I've also learned that I can trust that it'll be okay. That I
Mhm.
actually know enough. I tell my clients, you're not paying for this hour, you're paying for all of the trainings and all of the books I've read, and my capabilities of pulling this one chapter from this book and telling you right now, like, that's what you're paying me for, is
Mhm.
my time and my experience. And so, one thing that I'm learning to trust in myself is I still have all of those things in my brain, and they become relevant when I'm doing a podcast, especially with someone. And I'll come up with it, and I'll think about it when I need to, and I'll be able to say it when I need to, and it'll be okay. So that's probably been the greatest thing, like the improvement in my confidence level for doing something like this, which has been kind of a fun evolution.
Yeah.
And I think my singing lessons have helped with it too.
Yeah.
Just the confidence and speaking and recognizing, how do I sound and things like that.
Yeah. Great. So when you think back on all of the episodes that you've done,
Mhm,
right, whether with guests or whether with colleagues,
mhm.
are there any that stand out as an episode that really touched you or really surprised you in some way?
There's so many good shows, and so many that I feel grateful to the guests who joined me and colleagues that joined us on this project. I would say that, speaking of the singing teacher, I really enjoyed having Satyam, from Singers Connection on the show. He's just a dear, loving, wonderful healer also, and just the vulnerability that I showed on that episode, but also just his delivery and tone. He's such an awesome dude. I really enjoyed that show. But there's just been so many. I mean, I've had a couple of my kids on episodes, which have been really fun. My daughter-in-law and I have done a really special show, and watching her growth and vulnerability, which is a big, like, which is fun. I mean, to get to offer a platform for people to grow in their own right and to stretch their wings a little bit has been really fun. I think that so many of the messages in so many shows are just simple but important things on communication. I mean, my attachment episode has gotten a lot of traction, because we don't know about attachment when we're just laypersons who don't have counseling backgrounds. We don't really get it or know how critical it is to every single relationship. So that one gets a lot of traction, and I feel proud of that, because I'm like, that one everybody should learn. I mean, we should learn that in, eighth grade,
In
11th grade, definitely before you get married, like all of those things.
first grade.
First grade, yeah, we just don't know about those things, and just even assertive communication. That episode feels really important to me.
Mhm.
Don't stay small. Don't shrink up. Don't power over and be aggressive and shame and try to make people feel small. Like, people don't understand that that has pretty impactful that has a lot of impact on our relationships when you don't know how to assertively communicate. And so, I don't know. I mean, there's so many of them.
That's
We're making
awesome.
playlists now that are, keyed towards specific topics and concepts, because there's, now there might be 4 or 5 episodes within a genre of a topic that's important. And I'm like,
So what would be an
well, that's
example? Like, would there
um,
be an attachment
there's like
playlist
for that,
or
like there's a relationship
okay.
playlist, and I'm like, watch these 4 or 5 episodes on relationships if you're in a relationship, whether you want a relationship, because you should know probably all these things to have a healthy relationship. And as I do more, episodes, we'll add more to those playlists that are relevant. We're working on codependency. I think I have a codependency playlist now, and that would include things like communication and boundaries and the concepts of codependency, like all of those nuanced topics that there's different angles for a specific topic we could then put in a playlist. So if I'm struggling with this thing, here's 4 or 5 episodes that you might want to watch. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome. Thanks for doing that.
yeah,
We appreciate that.
yeah.
So, what have you learned about yourself as you've interviewed others?
I mean, I always am learning about myself through relationships, just like with our clients. It's like we are mirrors of aspects in relationships, whether people are growing or whether they're just in connection with you. And I think we see ourselves through others. And so for me personally, I'm keyed into that, generally speaking.
Mhm.
And where I used to err on the side of more of a perfectionism as an armor, now I'm kind of like, I'm just keyed into always wanting to be a lifelong learner. And when I notice myself upset or aggravated or annoyed or something over a 3 on a 0 to 10 scale, I'm always curious, what was that about me? Not what did someone else do to me, but why is that bothering me, or am I interested in, or am I drawn to them? What
Mhm.
is that about? And so I don't know that I could zero in on anything totally specific, but that I like to be with people. I like to learn from people, and I feel honored to get to be for people to share their gifts and their stories with us in this show, and in our counseling offices. Of course, it's such a treat and a blessing to get to do this work. So
Well, and we appreciate that you started this podcast and that you are getting that stuff out there and that you're inviting all of us to be part of it. And I
yeah,
really appreciate you allowing me to flip the script today.
thank
And we're
you.
going to continue with the script flipping on the next episode.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for approaching me with this. I think it's really fun. And, it puts me out of the control seat as well. Like, oh gosh, what are we going to do here? And I think that's good to exercise some flexibility. So I appreciate that as
Okay.
well. So thank you.
Uh huh.
I appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Adaptable, and thanks for tuning in. And if you liked it, go ahead and share it, like it, subscribe so you don't miss further episodes. And I'm also really open in the comments section. If there's a topic you want to hear about, we're always open and looking for their discussions that would be beneficial to our viewers. So don't be shy. And until we meet again, don't forget to lead with love. It'll never steer you wrong.